we can sell you this stone, and as long as you pay the monthly fee for this stone, you will not get broken into, and then you just know where the stones are, and you just don't break into those shops anymore, and you break into the ones that don't have the stones. Realistically, I'm trying to figure out, would I have to, like, assume, like, 10 feet of this is, like, the overgrowth, and then, like, a 5-foot passageway? All of a sudden, you're in the dungeon, and you're like, well, I guess I have to smack things with my staff as a sorcerer. I got nothing else going for me. That's your best idea for the start
Head
of the
empty.
show. Head empty. Yeah.
Head empty, just smoking.
I
Brain
love
on fire.
Yeah. I love that we're just like head empty hosts, and we're like, okay, now we get to talk about like heady things.
Yeah.
We're head empty, but we have heady things. That's great. Good.
Heady empty E.
Good news for all of the people listening. And oh, by the way, hi everybody. Welcome to Total Pebble Knockdown. I am Nathan.
And I am Alex, and our heads are about to be full, and hopefully yours are too.
Your ears are going to be full with whatever is in our heads. So there's something.
Hopefully not brain matter.
No, I'm hoping that that's not the case. We are going to start things off with a soapbox, and this time, though, Alex, I swear our soapbox is not going to be about predatory companies and bad practices and general viscera and anger. Not that kind of soapbox.
So is it really a soapbox?
It is, because it is an opinion piece.
Oh, okay.
Because it is an opinion piece. Because I was thinking...
Yellow journalism.
It is yellow journalism, that's right. Facts and opinions, they look so similar. Do you remember that from Inside Out?
No.
No? Okay, never mind. They're on the thought train, and they're like, wait, these are facts, these are opinions. Yeah, they look similar, but they are very different.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway.
I don't think I watched that as much as you did.
Oh, okay. I saw it literally the once, and I retained that information, but... Okay. Anyway, so our soapbox today, though, is something that I was thinking about recently, which is that I am of the mindset now that a shop in a game will basically explain everything that you need to know about the game world that you are in. Like, if you went into a just general store in a game world, you'd pretty much learn everything pertinent that you'd need to know about that game world.
Are we talking like the main, like a hub city? Or any shop?
It could be any shop, really.
I'm inclined to disagree with you.
Okay.
On the basis that, what if you're in like the general store of a small town?
And then work on like a barter system or something, or?
No, just like, what if it's a small town?
Okay.
And you're assuming that every bit of information that you can get in the store from the shopkeep is relevant to the rest of the greater world outside of their small region, for instance.
Okay.
Because news wouldn't necessarily travel that fast.
Okay.
Maybe they are a farming town, so all they have in supply are basically farming equipment people would need in town.
Okay.
Are you now saying that everything on this in this shop that you can purchase informs your decision that, oh, the rest of the world is just a big old farming world?
Well, here's the thing. Why don't I'll make the case that I was going with, and then you'll tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So a few of the things that you can learn just by standing into a shop, and I would say that any shop in a specific game world will pretty much tell you this. One, the kind of currency that they use. That's usually pretty standardized, unless you have something like a barter system. But if they're doing a barter system, you know that that's an option as well. The valuation of things, because even when you have small items, how much those go for can inform you about the worth of the currency that you are using. What the level of technology would be, what kind of equipment that you can actually use, the thematic elements of the world, if you're living in an agrarian society, like you were mentioning before, if you're living in a technological one, if this is a science fiction setting, if it's a medieval one, how much you're going to need to grind I thought that was kind of an important point, is that, like, if I know that I have been left with X number of fun bucks, and this Coca-Cola can over here is going to cost 5 times that, I also know how much experience and how much looting I'm going to have to do. You get an idea of how the economy works just from how they're selling. You can interact with PCs. You also learn how you actually interact with other people in the environment and what skills are going to be necessary in order to do so, in order to do any kind of trading. So I thought that those were a lot of the basic things about how the game world works that you can learn pretty easily from the shopkeep and from going into a shop. Now you can explain to me why I'm wrong.
If you're talking about the world as a system, then yeah, it would actually inform a lot of those, I think, as long as you don't have giant sweeping changes between different parts of your world.
Mm-hmm.
But that can happen too. For instance, going from a country to another country, you'll have lots of different things potentially, maybe different tech even. Like maybe you've got a high tech, like lower Renaissance, or maybe you've got like steam powered stuff in one country, and the other one is like low fantasy with magic and no real technology like that, for instance. That's the thing that can happen based on cultural differences and, say, sharing knowledge between different countries.
Okay.
Where, like, for instance, in the real world, there are islands and places, I think, in the Amazon with tribes, I believe, yes?
Sure.
That we would consider, like, third world, I think. They
wouldn't have, like, an economic system like we do.
They don't have nearly the same level of anything that we consider to be modern, for instance. They are very low-tech. They are, like, tribal still. They are living in huts. They're hunting with bows and spears.
Sounds nice, really.
Sure, except for the malaria. But
that and the indoor plumbing I like.
Yeah, so they're living a very different lifestyle than we are, and that's in the modern day, in the real world. Now, if you were to bring this into a fantasy setting, here's just a spitball of an idea: a tribe of goblins, living in a cave somewhere, trading with teeth of enemies or bones. If at all, they're just sharing or competing with each other for food and kills, versus the people that live in the fortress made of iron and stone. There is vast social differences. There are vast technological differences.
Sure.
Currency, as one of your examples, if you are in a store in one spot, in one town, maybe they mint their own currency. Maybe they use something specific as their own currency. Maybe they trade in salt.
Okay, well, that is something that they used to do.
They did.
Romans, I believe, did that, yeah.
Maybe the next town you go to has a different currency. Maybe they don't trade in salt. They're like, salt is kind of worthless here. We've got a salt mine over here, so it holds nothing to our candle here.
Right.
But you bring us some coconuts and we'll talk business.
Oh, coconuts are great. You can make them sound like horses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so currency is very malleable, especially if you want to keep your players not super, like, for instance, you're like, wow, I've noticed my players have a lot of gold they're just not spending. Maybe I want to make them spend some gold. Maybe the next town they go to doesn't take gold. You have to convert all of your gold at the bank.
Yeah.
To Electrum, which no one uses.
Yeah, no one uses Electrum, but maybe they only use Electrum here.
Or something else. Maybe you have to convert that gold into actual commodities and spices, for instance. Like spice trading.
Yeah, actually, if they might actually encourage you to trade stuff into Electrum if they had an Electrum mine and they want to just collect gold and copper and silver and trade off their Electrum that they can mint. That would be fine.
So the value of items, for instance, again, this will be determined by where you are in what the economy and culture is like.
Right.
The value of tools in a town that is craftsman may not be high. And a town that uses those tools, maybe farmers and stuff who don't have the energy, or a blacksmith in town, or any other town. Maybe they don't have a blacksmith to make tools. Tools will be worth a lot more because if you bring them, they normally have to ship them in.
Sure.
So maybe you want to
Sure.
buy one, it'll cost twice as much. But if you want to sell one, you'll get a really good deal.
Right. But now, so in some ways, though, the world design is still informed by that shopkeep, by that shop, because you find out the scarcity of certain items and their related valuation of those items.
Sure.
So
It's still
you've learned
informed,
that.
but I don't think one single shop
Okay.
will inform, because that's what you said is you walk into a shop and it'll inform you about the entire world. But I think that it's not entirely true because you'd have to walk into a lot of different shops and a lot of different communities to kind of see the whole run around of what's going on.
I get you. So what my problem is that I'm thinking about a world that is almost homogeneous in its layout.
Yeah, but are worlds like that?
So, depends how good a world builder you are.
All right, Nathan, if I want to buy a Coca-Cola here, how much does it cost, roughly?
Currently about $10.
Okay, not in Hawaii and not accounting for gas prices.
Okay, $1. Probably about $1.
Sure, if I want like a 2-liter bottle of Coke,
couple bucks.
it'll cost like $1 or $2.
Yeah.
Because 2 liters are cheaper. Now,
It's true.
if I were to go to Japan,
Yep.
and I'm going to look this up because I have no idea.
I love this. I'm gonna make a very strong opinion, but let me look up to see what the price is. But I do get a general sense of where you're going with this.
All right. If I were to go to Japan, how much do you think a 2-liter bottle of Coca-Cola would cost?
Do I have to do it in dollars, or do you want me to do it in yen?
I don't know the conversion rate, but I can look
I'd
it
say
up.
about 500 yen.
The average price in Tokyo is 225 yen. Let's find the conversion.
It would be about $2.30.
Do you know the conversion rate of yen off the hand?
Yen are roughly a penny.
Oh, well, it says right here that 225 yen is worth $1.67. When I can.
Oh, okay. So less.
Yeah, less than a penny. So, I mean, aside from inflation and conversion rates, like, the cost of things will be very different depending on that.
Right. Yeah. That's actually
If
a
you
pretty
want a
good deal.
loaf of, if you want a loaf of bread in Soviet Russia,
Well,
be prepared to sell your child.
the thing is, in Soviet Russia, bread eats you. In Soviet Russia, bread eats you.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah. So there's that. But if you go to France, the baguettes practically hand themselves to you. So something to think about. So I guess I will refine that statement, is that the shop in a town will tell you about the town.
That's more accurate.
More accurate, yeah. Granted, there are probably going to be a lot of differences between shopkeepers. Well, assuming that you are the kind of dynamic person who likes to create personalities for your shopkeepers, or for the different shops.
It's the Nurse Joy.
Oh yes, everybody.
Officer Jenny of your game world.
They're all Nurse Joy. They're single
all
one.
Related and similar.
And they do the exact same thing, and they look exactly the same, and you cannot tell them apart.
And then you get them together, 5 of them at once, and you're like, Officer Jenny, Officer Jenny, Officer Jenny, Officer Jenny.
Yeah.
And Brock is like...
Yeah, exactly. Well, because Brock is Brock, man.
Brock is Brock.
Brock is Brock, yeah. He's a problem anyway. But the thing is...
I can see the thumbnail now. It's 5 Officer Jennys and Brock just going...
Yeah, which is pretty much his entire state of being through that entire series. But yeah, okay, so...
That's why they abandoned Brock.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Brock. You're making things awkward for everybody. I'm sorry, Brock. This is hard enough with Ash and his Pikachu thing going on. We don't need you doing your stuff. But okay, so let's assume though I don't want to have all of my shopkeepers be the same. There will probably be a little bit of a difference, but you can still I would make the case that you can still interact with the individual shopkeepers and you can learn a lot about the world, because if anybody's going to know about it, it is probably going to be the people that run shops themselves.
Well,
they talk to the most
shops or people working and running taverns.
Taverns, inns, and also, I'd say, temples would probably be good.
Yeah.
You'd probably learn a lot. But I figure everybody's gonna be buying general goods. Like, if we're talking about a general goods store or a weapon store. Actually, even like a weapon store, a potion store, or anything like that would inform for an adventure a lot of things that they needed to know.
Sure, if a town actually has like an apothecary,
Yeah.
that is different than just a general store. If a town's big enough and caters to adventurers, they'll probably have a specialty shop for adventurers. Now, if your town only has a general store, they probably won't have as much adventuring gear.
Which also tells you exactly how much adventuring goes on in that area.
Right. A good thing I was listening to about this actual topic not that long ago, not because I knew we were going to talk about it, just because it came up. Will be like, if the town doesn't really get adventurers a whole lot, why are they gonna... They might only have a single sword in town for sale. It might be a very, like... Maybe it's an heirloom or a pricey magic weapon that's on display as a show of prestige.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it might just be the one. And it's not because they're trying to sell it. They're, you know, potentially they want to trade that to a trader for a really good item that they come in town with, and that it's worth a lot of money, and therefore they could trade it for something equally as valuable to them.
Sure.
Like a small town probably might have a blacksmith, but they might not. So if they have blacksmith, they might have some simple weapons, and they might have a little bit of adventuring gear for when it comes up, but they're probably going to have limited stock.
Sure. I can also see the idea of you having like a general store, and then for some reason, like, they have a giveaway. Like, if you can name the number of magic jelly beans that are in this jar, you can win this. You can win the deadliest sword in the world.
You win this bag of infinite jelly beans.
You win this bag of infinite jelly beans. Or you go to a town and they have like an attraction like the Route 66 towns always did, that's like the world's smashiest hammer. And you're like, ooh, I could have a case where I could try to get the world's smashiest hammer.
Perfect. Who doesn't need the world's smashiest hammer?
Oh man, that's got to be an item now.
Actually, the Hulk doesn't need the world's smashiest hammer.
No, that's called his fist.
Yeah.
It's the fist. And you know what? Maybe the world's smashiest hammer is occasionally called Fist of Hulk.
You know, to be fair, I have a different quote in mind, but I don't know if it's appropriate.
Probably not.
For all of you on Patreon listening to this unedited, remember what Captain Hammer said. The hammer is my penis, not my fist.
It's true. Thank you.
Whatever it was that Nathan Fillion said in that role.
Thank you, Dr. Horrible and Sing-Along Blog. All I know is that Nathan Fillion at some point said something to that effect. And that's all we needed.
We'll figure it out.
Captain Hammer knows what's up. Anyway. No, apparently he didn't. I'm still of the mindset that shops are really where you can get informed about the world far more than pretty much anywhere else. Taverns would be good, but they're also not going to sell you things. I don't think you learn about the actual economy and currency of the world as easily in a tavern.
You can trade. You can find people to trade with in a tavern. They'll sell you food and meals and information, probably.
They might have, like, little pop-up stalls in the,
Well, where do you think all of these people running shops in town go after a nice hard day working?
Oh, that's true. That's true. And then you have to catch them during off hours, and if you get them drunk, you can probably get better prices for things anyway.
Sure, or you just know they're not home and you get the best price by breaking into their shop.
You break into their shop, yeah. And actually, that informs you a lot about the world, too, because it also tells you what kind of security they actually have. And what law enforcement is like in this world, and how secure the trading district is, and what the crime rates are like here. You could find out a lot about the world that way too.
feel like you should run a racket sometime in a small town where you're a security,
Consultant.
you're offering security services,
Yeah.
and you're just randomly breaking windows and breaking into places at night.
Oh yeah.
When you know everyone's there, and be like, man, the crime rates in this town really have gone off the rails lately. Looks like you need a security firm.
And that, yeah, you have a security firm, and then the great thing about it is, this is so terrific, is that you tell them about this magical protection stone, and it's just a freaking stone that you grabbed off the ground, and maybe you did some transmogrification to it to make it look glowy or something, and you say, we can sell you this stone, and as long as you pay the monthly fee for this stone, you will not get broken into, and then you just know where the stones are, and you just don't break into those shops anymore, and you break into the ones that don't have the stones.
Right, that's kind of what the Thieves Guilds do when they, mark.
Oh yeah.
Places.
Yeah, we don't touch these because they pay protection money. I think that's what it essentially gets down to. Be a shame if somebody broke up this store. That's just that explains a whole lot of other things about mostly you and your adventuring party more than the world, though. So, anyway. So, okay, I think we've clarified this a little bit more. Shops can inform a lot about the world, but one will not inform everything about the world proper.
I think that's a good take for this.
Yeah, alright. Soapbox complete. Much more fun than most of our soapboxes.
Much more, not one-sided.
Yes. Yes. Because most of the one-sided ones are company do bad thing. Not happy with company do bad thing.
Companies do bad things. Companies are not people, and they should not be treated as people.
No. We know people that do bad thing too, but company also do bad thing. Yes.
If we can treat a company as a person, we can throw company in jail.
Yes, it's true. We can hold company accountable.
That's the only way this is okay.
That's right. If company people, then company have personal responsibility to do right thing. Anyway, thank you for joining us on our TED Talk and on this soapbox. All right, Alex, I got a mechanically speaking for you.
Oh, good. The mechanics can speak right to me. Let me hear them.
Okay, terrific. So, as you are probably aware, my bard recently became a level 5 bard.
Great! Everyone's so excited, and the rocks are gonna fall and the bard's gonna die.
Oh, absolutely. And as you know, because I'm a level 5 bard, that means that I have 3rd level spells. And...
Even better!
Oh, yes. Which is scary.
Maybe you'll be useless. Or sorry, useful. You already are useless.
Thanks for that.
Vicious Mockery!
Vicious Mockery is now 2d4s.
Slightly better. You can do longsword damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do longsword damage. No, actually, damage-dealing spells for me are mostly the thunder ones at this point.
Yeah, sound-based ones are pretty good.
Yeah. So anyway, I traded out one of my 2nd level spells so that I could get Tiny Hut, because Tiny Hut's always useful. But...
That makes a tiny hut, right?
That does make a tiny hut, yes. It does. Very useful when you're camping or in an unsecure area. Because it keeps other creatures from coming into the hut, but your people can move in and out. But that's not the big one, because I also get another spell, and I took
Fireball.
a 3rd... no, I don't have Fireball yet. I do have magical secrets, but I don't think I'm taking Fireball when I get there. But the thing about it is, I was able to get one from my spell list that I thought would be a lot of fun, called Plant Growth! Yay, Plant Growth! And I will actually, while we are doing this, I will pull it up, because I want you to actually see what Plant Growth does.
I'm vaguely familiar, it's been a while. I know it is technically part of the Druid spell list. I believe probably at a lower level.
You know what? It might actually be, but it is also in the Bard spell list.
Sure, Bard has a lot of crossover. With
yeah.
Other spell lists.
And it's also important to note, one of the things you might be thinking about is that the Druid has a specific one called Spike Growth.
No, I know. They also have Plant Growth.
Oh, okay.
Spike Growth, I think, is specific to Druids and maybe Rangers.
Yeah, they can do both, and if you do both of them at the same time, Oh boy,
It's even worse.
That's a good combination. And I read, it's a 3rd level instantaneous transmutation spell. Luckily, it doesn't take control or concentration or anything. And once you do it, it just changes stuff, similar to like a mold earth or shape water or anything. But if I read it correctly, and I do, the spell
word for word even.
Yes, this spell channels vitality into plants within a specific area. The specific area is very large, just for the record. There are 2 possible uses for the spell, granting either immediate or long-term benefits. I like spells that have a lot of different kinds of applications, because the motility of them is what I really enjoy. This one fits that itch. If you cast the spell using one action, this is the one people probably use. Choose a point within range. All normal plants in a 100-foot radius centered on that point become thick and overgrown. A creature moving through the area must spend 4 feet of movement for every 1 foot it moves. You can exclude 1 or more areas of any size within the spell's area from being affected. And then the second use for it is cool, but it's really more of a narrative thing, which is if you cast the spell over 8 hours, I'm just dancing for 8 hours with my guitar. You enrich the land, and all plants in a half-mile radius centered on a point within range become enriched for 1 year. Plants yield twice the normal amount of food when harvested. So, you're famine.
I remember this one because my druid did have it.
Mm-hmm.
And he had, I believe, used the second version over 8 hours to help enrich the land after it was blighted, I think, for a bit. So I think he was going around and helping to restore some of that fertility and helping the plants grow back.
Yeah, I will probably try to do that as a nice favor for any nice communities that helped us out as a narrative piece. But the actual first one is probably the one people are using most often, because it is a very nice control spell to kind of deal with large hordes of enemies that might be rushing at you.
Yeah, 100-foot radius is pretty big.
That's huge. It has a range of 150 feet, so you can have like just an army off on the horizon, and essentially a 200-foot diameter sphere, so over and around, you can just create these overgrown weeds that rush up. But I had an idea for this that I think works inside essentially rules as written, but would be a specific version of casting the spell. And this is what I had an idea for. Since Max is, like an artist of sorts.
Sort of.
Yeah, he's a musical artist, but there's a certain whimsy to him. And I thought what he'd actually really like to do is to be able to use that to essentially create a labyrinth. So, like, just this big spherical labyrinth where you had those overgrown parts, and then you had pathways, specific pathways, that track through from one side to the other. And if he knew what that specific labyrinth was, it would make it easier for him to get from one side to the next. But anybody that's inside of it is now trying to figure out how they move through that, or if it's worth their time to try and bash through the hedges, even though it's going to severely limit their movement. Now, the reason why I thought that that would be possible inside of the spell is because of that little tagline about you can exclude 1 or more areas of any size within the spell's area from being affected.
Okay, so you're considering an area like a corridor, perhaps.
Like corridors as those areas that are excluded from the overgrowth.
Okay. I mean, it doesn't give you a limit on how many areas you can do, or their size, or anything else like that. So technically, rules as written, yeah, you could do that. I would say, if you were to do that with me, for instance, I would let you do it, but I would make you roll some kind of check.
Okay.
With it, maybe a nature, since it's dealing with plants.
Sure.
Or maybe just a general performance check to see how good you can do.
Sure. Okay.
Something like that, where it would be you and I can figure out what sounds best for this, for instance, and then we go with that. As long as you pass your check, it's like, yeah, you are able to do that.
Fair enough. Yeah. On that topic too, I was thinking to myself, do I need to actually build that maze? Like, do I have to actually lay that? Is there a process, even if I don't know it in real life, would I have to have a point where, like, Max actually sat down in a tavern, had a paper napkin in his hand, and he's, like, tracing out how he wants that maze to run so that he can figure out a really easy way for him to get from point A to point B, but then also these elaborate corridors that would make it harder for creatures to actually get around?
I think it'd be more interesting if you just had to have it in your head, but you could do it on land even if you didn't necessarily know what the land was like.
Got it.
But I think it'd be better if you knew the lay of that land where you're going to do it, because otherwise it's like, oh, yes, I've done this labyrinth here, but suddenly there's a rock in the middle of the corridor where there should be a way to get through here easily without going around it, but now there's a giant rock in the way.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great if, say, you were like, I want to make this labyrinth. I go, cool, make your check. And then you fail the check, and I was like, cool, you make the corridor. But instead of it being the one that you're familiar with, you have no idea how to navigate it now because you fucked up.
Yeah, you fucked up. So now now you're probably going to get lost in your own maze.
Now you're lost in the maze that you made.
Yeah. The other part of that I'm trying to figure out is, so I want to make it so that, like, any enemies that are in this would be compelled to try and figure out how to get through it rather than just hack their way through each and every one of those walls. So realistically, I'm trying to figure out, would I have to, like, assume, like, 10 feet of this is, like, the overgrowth, and then, like, a 5-foot passageway, and then, like, another 5-foot barricade on the other part of this to make this worthwhile? Because if I make them, like, a foot wide, it's just not going to be much point. Like,
it would also depend on how tall the overgrowth is, for instance.
Sure. You could make it very tall because it's...
I think you could do something like that, maybe with mixing it with an enchantment type spell, maybe a command spell, or something else, like compulsion, if not command. I don't remember all the bard spells, but maybe a taunt, where I bet you can't find your way through this maze as a compulsion, and they're like, I bet you I can, I'll find my way through this maze. Where you're commanding them to actually try and navigate the maze.
Right.
Instead of just hack their way through it.
Right. I kind of figure that any monster that has a fairly good intelligence, like just not like a beast that has like an intelligence score of 2 or something like that, will try to get through that first hedge and then kind of go, you know what, maybe I'll try to find a way. like after the first one, do I want to try getting through this next one, or do I want to go around?
I would have, like, for instance, if you did that, I think I would make it so monsters that are somewhat intelligent might make wisdom saving throws.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if they're smart enough to realize the path is faster, or if not, they're just going to try and trudge through the grass and overgrowth, you know?
Through my overgrowth to see if they can do it, yeah. I did figure, though, that if the hedges are about 10 feet, they'd have to expend 40 feet of movement to get through there, and for a lot of creatures, that's their whole movement.
Right.
Yeah. So I figured that, and without sacrificing too much in the way of, like, non-difficult ground, if there was, like, a 5-foot passageway in between, it's like, I could sack that, like, 5-foot passageways for, you know, to make it a little easier for them to actually get through if they did indeed hack through, but it would also be way more interesting to actually have a maze. Also a lot of fun if you just do that for people's amusement, or if you had people in your party and you said, yeah, no, it's okay, I'll cast it, then we can camp out inside the maze. And it's going to be really difficult, but I know how to get out of it really easy. Don't worry about that. And
I mean, you can always just, you know, well, maybe not that. You can't dismiss that spell because it's instant. Never mind.
Yeah, that, as far as I'm aware, if I do this plant, which is why I have to be careful, if you do the plant growth, when you cast it, it's just now overgrown until something comes along to actually move it.
Right.
Which means that if you cast it too close to you and you do not separate your own party from the mix, your party is now in trouble too.
Right.
There's a lot of fun uses for it, especially if you worry about getting surrounded and you want to just create like a narrow corridor where you are and put it all the way
more so
around.
if you have someone with Entangle.
Oh yeah, if you said, or as we were talking about earlier, spike growth, because then you can lay down a patch that's literally just, taking damage as you go through, and if you can mess that with a force spell that keeps pushing people away.
Sure. My ranger can take spike growth, I believe.
Oh yes, well that's a very good one to take. Yeah, that's gonna be a weird day in the woods for some boars. Some boards are gonna wonder what they're doing. That's always a good idea. Now, technically, because that is a sphere, you could actually encapsulate it over the top if you didn't want, like, flyers to be able to fly out of it easily. That might actually make it more worth their time to try and traverse the maze.
Up until the fire elemental comes in and just burns the maze down.
The other thing I was thinking about is, man, I wish I had just some kind of fire spell, because if it turns out that this doesn't work, just set my whole maze on fire and walk away.
You really need much of a fire spell at that point. You just need a nice torch.
Yeah, you need a good torch. Or a strong tinder box.
Yeah.
Just create a bonfire, just your little campfire on the outside. They're in the middle of going through a maze. They're not going to notice. You'll be able to do that.
What's all that smoke? Who knows?
Yeah, we're trapped in this maze. Now it's all on fire. What are we going to do about it? I think that...
Run!
Yeah, run. Run where? Run Burgundy. Ron Burgundy. That's what I was thinking about. Anyway, that is definitely a Ron Burgundy move for D&D, though. Just creating a giant burning maze.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Anyway, my purpose of that is to create essentially a signature version of the plant growth spell that's called Max's Mystery Maze. Which is just going to be fun for the whole family. Not for raiders.
What you do is you find a giant patch of poison ivy, and you turn that into
that gets... Do they take like 1d4 poison damage if they go through the hedges?
They all contract severe poison ivy.
They start itching all over?
Yep.
Then they have to make like a constitution saving throw every turn to see if they just spend their entire movement itching.
or brambles. If you could see, here's the thing about plant growth. Is if you can identify plants that are already hazardous.
Oh yeah.
Brambles, briars.
Sure.
Poison plants, venomous plants, plants that are maybe sentient.
Spiky plants. Always good.
Briars. Maybe you get plants that are like man-eater plants.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Or plants like assassin vines.
Perfect.
So it's like those plants would probably get a resistance throw to save against it, but can you imagine?
Oh. Yeah.
An assassin vine that becomes grown much larger.
Oh, I love that. Let's make that happen. Right. It'd be like Little Shop of Horrors, where you just turn Audrey 2 into Audrey 2000. Just Audrey 2000, everybody.
Yes.
It's good times. Now I know the episode title. Anyway.
Feed me Seymour. And you just have Seymour being eaten by the plant.
Yep. Always. Considering that I've been trying to do this inside of the rules as the spell actually goes, do you see any issue with that, besides the modifications that you might put onto it for memorizing the spell or whatever?
No, I don't really see any reason to say no, you can't do that. It's not like it's super game-breaking. It's fun, it's interesting, it's a weird way to use the spell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And again, as we said, if you find plants that are already hazardous, then it's even more of a boon.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So...
Yeah. I mean, I figured that from a technical standpoint, the only thing I've kind of done is remove areas that are actually overgrown, which is kind of not even an optimal way to use it, but I thought might be a better, more confusing thing to do to enemies, just to maybe troll them. I don't know, but but definitely something to give the enemies more to think about when you encounter them. You know?
Definitely.
But then the other reason why I did it was because I thought, well, if Max knows how to get through it easily, then it would be something that he and the party could get out of much easier, while it would be much more difficult for the raiders or whatever you encounter to move through it. If I just did a straight on plant growth and you just had overgrown weeds, it's equally difficult for everybody. But if he has the knowledge to, and he's done a good job at making it, it becomes way, way easier for him to get out of it or through from one side to another, where everyone might be chasing and following suit. Also, a fun party trick if the kids in town just want a maze to run through. Finally on the show today, we have a Games You Didn't Think We'd Play, and we're going to be talking, Alex, about a Diablo game.
Is it the one everyone's talking about?
No! No, it's not. Sorry. No, I am not wading into Diablo Immortal. And at this present time, have no interest in doing so.
We might cover that at a later date if we feel it warrants our input on it.
If I have the constitution and the time. So probably won't. But here's the thing. No, actually, I went way back to a game that I had never played before, the original Diablo.
Same. I owned it. I tried it after I had played Diablo 2.
Yep.
And I tried Diablo 1 because I was like, wow, Diablo 2 is really good.
It is.
And then I went to try Diablo 1 and went, I hate this.
Yeah, it is not the same as Diablo 2.
It's like, I would like to run. Why am I walking everywhere?
Yeah, and why do they make it so hard to actually access all of the menus and spells and everything like that? This was a problem. Now, technically, I got the Diablo plus Hellfire, and in case you were wondering about that, there are apparently additional quests. It's, they're very generous when they say that it allows for high definition. That's a real generous statement about high definition. I don't know if I could really claim that. The pixels, the pixelation looks very crisp, I guess is what I could say. And then also,
high definition of 800 by 600?
Yeah, well, no, technically it's like it can do 1920 or something like that, but it still looks just as pixelated as it ever did. It's just, I guess, in a larger frame. But then the other thing that it does is you probably remember that there's like the 3 basic classes, which are like the sorcerer and the fighter and the rogue or something like that.
Probably the paladin or the warrior, and then the magic user, and then the ranged user. Yeah,
there is essentially like your long range, your short range, and your spellcaster. But then they throw into the mix when they get to the Hellfire another class, which is the monk. The monk actually comes into play here. I thought, well, since I'm here, I might as well start by playing the monk.
Of course, that is what you do.
I don't recommend it. It's not great. I hate to tell you this, that it's more of like the dexterity melee build, but not great. Can't hit for shit. And did not do very well. I will probably have a little video running around this time where I did get to the butcher in the cathedral, trying to do this with my monk, whose big benefit is supposed to be that they can hit pretty consistently. Like, they don't hit for damage, because they got the little staff that does like 2 to 4 damage or something like that. Mm-hmm. But the idea that you can hit a lot and very, consistently without missing. I have a compilation where I got to the butcher goes, fresh meat, comes out with this thing, and you just watch as the monk and the butcher just keep swinging at each other, and just you hear no contact coming between the two of them until eventually you just die because the butcher got in 3 or 4 actual hits on you, and you're dead. And I tried it over and over again, and I was like, yep, this doesn't work for me. I don't know why I have this. And then decided to try the Sorcerer, and the Sorcerer is definitely better because it can cast Firebolt.
Of course, that makes everything better.
It can cast a Firebolt at things. The one problem is what happens when you run out of mana, because there's no regeneration in this. Then you have to find so basically, if you don't have a potion of mana, and you obviously don't have the regeneration or a spell that can recharge it, all of a sudden you're in the dungeon, and you're like, well, I guess I have to smack things with my staff as a sorcerer. I got nothing else going for me. But I was interested in it because I was familiar with playing Diablo 2 for an inordinate amount of time.
Same.
Diablo 3 to a slightly lesser degree, but I spent a lot of time with that too. I was curious about the origins of it because I knew people that had played it. And it's interesting to go back and to see, like, Deckard Cain, to see Wirt, because all you know from Diablo 2 is that there's a leg.
And he's dead.
It's Wirt's leg and he's dead. I did not know Wirt was like a young boy who would sell you special equipment and had the artificial peg leg or whatever. But that's apparently his story, and now he's also dead in the later games, so...
Well, Tristram got destroyed, so... yeah.
So there's that. Yeah. But anyway, going through the cathedral, realizing pretty quickly that the scope of the game is much more limited than later games were. Because in the later games, you had the town, and then you would get out into the outskirts of the town, and then there'd be dungeons inside of it. But yeah.
Wasn't Diablo 1 basically go into the cathedral and go down?
You keep going down level after level into the cathedral, yeah. And by the time you get to level 2 is where you're supposed to interact with the butcher. And then, like, levels beyond that, there's other challenges too. And eventually, I guess at the bottom, there's a Diablo. And you can fight the Diablo. And hopefully win. Although that, apparently, from what we know from later games, doesn't really hold.
I mean, you win.
Only to become what you sought to destroy.
You were the chosen one.
You were the chosen one, sorcerer. You had the high ground. You had to go down into the cathedral. You could have stood on the steps. But at any rate, yeah, so I did try those 2 archetypes. I did not try the other character classes because I kind of figured, well, I've tried the melee, and now I've tried the long-range spellcaster, and I'm seeing problems with how the mana system is built. There's also not nearly as much in the way of what you can do with spells and abilities. You don't have a lot. Your spells are handled with just the mana, and you pretty much just pick them up through spell books you collect in the world, and you can only have one of them equipped at any time, which I found was a very bad way to do this, because every time I said to myself, oh, maybe I'd like to pick a new spell, you have to go into a menu and change what the active spell or ability is so that you can cast it. And I'm sitting there like going, wasn't there a thing in other games where I could just hotkey like 8 of these abilities so that I could just use them whenever? Yeah, there were, not in one. That you pick from a list of the one thing you can do that's a special thing you can do. And if you don't like it, get ready to, while enemies are trying to hit you, go into the spell lists and choose. It brought back those bad visions of, like, Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch, where you're in the battle arenas never stop, but in order to access any of your abilities, you have to go through this tier list, like, menu, while you're running around the battlefield trying to get away from people. And I'm like, I never liked that version of how they do spells.
Yeah, that's not so great.
No, let me have a few that I actively... when it came to Ni no Kuni, I kept thinking to myself, okay, what is the one that I can access by literally just pushing A on the first, A on the second tier, A on the third, And then I don't have to scroll down. Like, can I set it so that the one thing I really want to do to attack is just like the first option, then the first option, then the first option, and then I can attack. Yeah. So I tried to get used to that. But Diablo, it's actually even worse because I have to go into a scroll list and I have to choose between the things that are active. And then when it comes to the melee combat, you really just have the one option of clicking on the thing and going there and keep clicking on it until it goes away and dies.
Then click somewhere else.
Maybe because the graphics have not aged particularly well. In fact, definitely because the graphics haven't aged very well. It is also very difficult to tell what is on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
It is very muddy, and it is very difficult to see, like, through all the pixelated corpses of the demons that you're fighting, if that's a potion or anything like that. They also make them quite small in the game, and you have fairly limited storage space. And in general, it's if you were playing the later Diablo games, like, these are great, I love this hack and slash and ARPG in action, I should go back and play the original. Not recommended. Don't recommend it. You will not get a better understanding of the world from it. You will not find it interesting, because you can tell that they looked at Diablo, they realized that that's really just a template for the idea, and then when they got to Diablo 2, that's really where they expanded upon it. Yeah. It does feel like there's a lot of series that had great concept for the first iteration, and then it wasn't until like the second game where it's like, oh, now it's an actual series. Like this happened with Assassin's Creed as well. If you play the original Assassin's Creed, it's like, this feels like proof of concept. Once they get to 2, it's like an actual game. An actual game you can play. Diablo very much falls into that territory. Did you have a similar impression with the time that you spent with Diablo, or...?
I didn't spend much time with the first one because I had already spent time with Diablo 2.
Right.
It was very much so a bit of, what the fuck is this?
Yep.
This is nothing like the other game. I don't want to play this.
Right, exactly. It is even the kind of thing where I'm kind of like going, can I ask for a refund on this, and maybe I'll get something else with the money? I did get it on GOG, so I actually think I have the time to say, I did not like this. Sorry, can I not have this anymore? I'll buy something else from you, I swear. I have other ideas of what I'd like. Sunless Sea is on sale. I'll get that. That would be fun.
There you go.
Yay. It's cheaper. It's cheaper. So yeah, while I'm a fan of going back to like old school games and seeing the origins of them, I'm also of the mindset that doesn't make them inherently good. I keep looking every time I'm on a game list at Daggerfall, because I have Arena and Daggerfall, the original, Elder Scrolls games, and it's like I'd find it fun to try those out. And then I really think about it for a second, and I see some of the graphics, and I'm like, ugh.
Maybe some other time.
Maybe a different time, because boy howdy, I just think that they're so old. I can't wrap my head around it. After experiencing like Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim, it's hard to go back to the real old school things and try to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You realize just how far they've come, not just from the graphics perspective or the technological perspective, but also just from how they organize the user interface and control schemes.
Yeah. Things have come a long way, and we're happy for it.
Yeah, we're happy for it. Also, remember, a lot of those old ones didn't have controller support.
Yeah.
So, something to think about. Lord knows Diablo didn't. So that's good. Hey, if I had had controller support, maybe I could have just used the bumpers or something to actually assign spells. No, that would have been... No, that would have been too sensible. So anyway, general takeaway, original Diablo, not so much. Diablo 2, Yes.
Sure. And if you have the remaster,
It's not bad.
it's fun. It's not bad.
Not bad.
I might go back and play some of that later.
Not bad. Diablo 3, also not bad.
Pretty great. Actually, I would have preferred had they done Diablo 2 remastered
In
with
style
the engine
of
for Diablo 3
3. Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
Just because the gameplay of Diablo 3 is so much more fast-paced and visceral.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, the only big thing that I did not like about the changes from 3 was how they handled skills.
Sure, and I get that. I
Yeah.
totally get that. I mean, they're still decent. There's a lot of options you can have and a lot of stuff to do with them,
Yeah.
but I agree.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I understand why they did it, because that way, when you're playing a class, you unlock all of the options over the course of time through leveling. But I liked in 2 because you got to actually choose your abilities. You got to choose your spells, and you got to actually customize your character throughout that entire run, which I just thought was better, because it means that I can play like a druid, but every druid I play might be a different build
Right.
than the previous one. And in 3, it's like I played a witch doctor, and my witch doctor is always going to grow out to the exact same thing.
Right.
It's
There's
just
only a few builds that people generally do, unless they're trying weird shit, so.
Right, but like
well.
everything that you can do gets unlocked over like every level. You just unlock things automatically, and I was like, that takes a little bit of player agency out of it for me, which I wasn't as fan of. But not criticism of the game itself, because the game itself was a lot of fun, and I think they did a good job of how they built it. But so yeah, 2 great, 3 pretty darn good, 1 not
Sounds about right.
not terrific. So anyway, just food for thought. Hey, if you like Diablo and you want to tell me I'm wrong, feel free to in the comments. Make a case for me. I'd love to have a case made for the original Diablo, because I could not find it myself. So that does it for another episode of Total Pebble Knockdown. Thank you for joining us on this episode. And Alex, if people wanted to find out where they can get all of the pebbles, totally pebbles for that matter, where could they go on the internet?
You can head over to our lovely website over at totalpebbleknockdown.com.
That's right, and when you are there, you can even click on the Patreon banner. We actually release full versions of these episodes before the actual audio or the individual video podcasts come out. So feel free to click over there, as well as early releases of a lot of our other content that we have on here. And also, while you're on the website, you can check out Titanium Mine. You can check out Creatures. We have a lot of other cool things that are on there for you to explore.
100%.
100%, yes. And make sure to check us out on every podcast app known to mankind, and you can check us out on social media. I am at Titanium.
I am at EXP Limited, and the show is over at Pebble Knockdown.
At Pebble Knockdown. That's right. And until next time, thank you for delving into this cathedral.
Thanks for coming to our TED Talk.
Thanks for coming to the TED Talk. We appreciate it. And until the next TED Talk, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye.